So yeah, the first night we were at the staging area, and we had ridden out there on the bus, and it took a few nights to get to that point. And, you know, we were all feeling like impatient. And we were all just making the fire and sitting around joking with the local guys. And then we got the call to get up and walk out. And then we started walking, and then it felt really real, like, okay, well, now we're on a battlefield. And it smells like a battlefield. It smells like, you know, gunpowder and death and bodies and stuff. But like really faint at that point, but you notice the difference. And you can hear the shooting and the airstrikes and stuff. So it was a full moon, or about to be a full moon, like 1 or 2 nights away from it. So it was like really bright. And we were just following the trail that the bulldozers and the Humvees had been on in like a long line of people. And single file, and like, you know, we'd see like some tangled up wires on the road and step over it and stuff like that, like craters and rubble and ruins and like ruined buildings and everything. And we walked for a while, and I didn't have any orientation of like where the enemy was and where our friends were. I could just tell like there was more fighting over to the front and to the left of us, and a little bit maybe to the right of us, but you know, just like being really paranoid. And then we got to our building and we went upstairs, and we had walked a while, so by that point we were all pretty tired. And then we took turns doing security with the night vision and the infrared scope on that M16. Yeah. And I noticed that night that I saw a campfire behind a building across the river from us. So they said, okay, everything, like when we had walked out, the building was on our left, and they said the enemy is on our right from there. So we get in the building, and turning to the right, everything on that side of us, like a whole 180 degrees from our left and right to that direction, was the enemy. And to the left and right was all friends in a straight line of buildings. And then as soon as we got up on that roof, I saw an explosion to the left of us at the next building further down the line, and heard a guy screaming, and the killdozer was there. So the big bulldozer had gone up, and some guy was on foot around it, and then an explosion happened, and I think it was a mine, but he was screaming for a while, and then he got quiet, and a Humvee came up and took him away. So I don't know what happened, if he like just like composed himself, or if he died and bled out. But the Humvee came and took him away, and we had people on the ground walking around in front of the building, and then they went back up inside and came up to the roof and went to sleep. And across the river from us, I noticed the compound, and it looked like there was a campfire in there, and I was pointing that out. And then the next morning, like as soon as we got up, we could hear the fighting off to the left of us. Like it sounded like an L shape. Like to our left and right there was a straight line, but to our left it sounded like the line turned sharply to the left again at a right angle, and that there was a lot of fighting over there. And every now and then a stray bullet would go over us, and we heard like a meow.
Well, that's where we were, because I remember the commander showing us on the computer saying you're on the corner of the L.
Yeah.
You know, so that you're right sort of on the 2 points of the 2 front lines. Yeah. But go on.
And then that morning we had mortars come in. So at first it was like a little like across the street, sort of like there was like a dirt road to the left of the building. Yeah. And there was a few explosions there, and I was just standing up kind of stupid, like, what's that? You know, like, and Zafar was like, oh, those are mortars, get down. And right as he was saying it, 3 more came in right next to the building on our side of the dirt road. And I was watching them, and like, sort of like the first slow motion experience for me, I started to get down, and when they went like boom, 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 the shrapnel was going like past me, and I heard one piece go to the right of my head, and it sounded like spinning, like whang. And that was the first time I felt like I was close to danger. And I got down, and we all like ran downstairs into the 2nd floor, and Carker was looking towards the enemy, and he said, oh, I see people running. And that morning before the mortars, I had said, that place where I saw the campfire, there's smoke coming from there. The fire had gone out when I did no bet again that sunrise. And then after sunrise, the fire came back, and there was smoke coming up. And there was a truck there. So we were saying, I think I think that truck came overnight and people were parked there, and that was where the mortars were coming from, and that they had ran after they had launched some mortars, and they just barely missed our building. So Carker wanted me to shoot, and I couldn't see the people he said he saw running from there, and then they ran back, and he was pointing to where they had been, and then I saw people, you called it out later too, traffic going back and forth between the buildings that were behind that building with the wall where I had seen the campfire. So then I noticed, thanks to you calling it out, there was foot traffic, people with weapons, and then motorcycles, trucks going back and forth in there. So I started shooting at them. And then I think I hit one guy in the leg because I had shot, and the scope shakes, so it's hard to see the results of your shot, especially when there's a delay at that range, because that was like at least 1,000 meters, and I was using the bottom of the stick of the crosshairs as like a marker. And then I saw somebody else run out and help the guy up, and he was limping, and they ran back. So I was like, oh, okay, so I can hit targets at that range. And I kept shooting whenever I would see, and you would call out the motorcycle, and Soro and Carker were also being really helpful. And then that day, Gabar called for an airstrike. He translated for us. We said we should hit that area, and then I think they hit a couple times, and one of them hit that armory, and it burned and exploded for an hour.
That was later in the day, yeah.
And then,
really good.
And then in that afternoon, like right before lunch, was when Vice News showed up for the first time. Yeah. And they had helmets and body armor, and I was busy watching because I didn't want to miss if the enemy came across that open space again. So when they showed up, I was like, oh, hey, and I waved, but I didn't move, and I kept looking down the scope. And I told him, like, I'm busy now. And then after a while, I think Soro was like, hey, let me give you a break. And I was like, yeah, my eyes are tired. And Vice wanted to do an interview, and they had interviewed Zaffer while I was shooting and while I was watching. And every now and then I would see a target and I would shoot. And then I had the interview with them. And we talked about, why I'm there and where I'm from and all that. And then I went back to the rifle, ate lunch, and around then the van pulled up. And I saw the van, and it looked like they had pulled up into this open space and opened the door and were unloading like a big tripod and a weapon. So I was like, okay, that's like a wire-guided rocket, like the kind that killed Shaheen, and I don't want us to get hit by that. So I just started shooting as much as I could in that direction. And I want to shoot later today, but like last time to shoot before I go home. So I started shooting, and I was like, in my head I had this like funny stereotypical thought of like, not today, like, you're not gonna kill one of us with a rocket today, man. So I started shooting, and I'm shooting and reloading, and they started to run around, and they got back in the van and they left. And then I was like, okay, cool, I'm driving them away, and that felt good. Like, that made me feel strong, and like I was making a difference and like protecting the team. And then they said there's a truck over there, and I saw this truck moving between buildings, and I shot at it, and then it stopped moving. So I was like, oh cool, maybe I got the driver through the windshield. And then the truck just stayed there, and it didn't move, and it was like just between two buildings I could see the cab and the windshield of the truck. So I fired a few more times into it, and it never moved again while we were there. And then we were hearing these like weird reports about, oh, there's somebody over there surrendering. And I was like, well, what did he do? Did he swim across the water? Like, did he run across this big open area and we didn't see him coming? And like, because we've been like wearing out our eyeballs staring over there. But they said there's somebody who wants to surrender. He's right over there. So we were like, all right. And then Vice News wanted to get that on camera. So they followed us down, and we moved like tactically from building to building. And then we split up, and I think you and me went up on the roof of the next building. And I was covering with the sniper rifle, and they said he's over by that building, so point your crosshairs into the windows of that building. So we were focused on that while Zaffer and Carker and I think Gabar went towards the building.
Yeah, there was a bunch of them. I remember that the Cassidy guy who was in that second building that we went to was very nervous, and he was just shooting in the general direction of the guy.
Yeah.
Which made it sort of confusing to us, sort of, because we'd heard, okay, the guys wanted to surrender. What are you shooting at? You know, continue. Yeah. So the bunch of them then went off.
Yeah.
And then went into the trees, and they just had those radios out with 100-meter range. Remember?
Yeah, and the radios weren't working. Like,
Yeah.
they got to the point where we couldn't talk to them anymore, and I could see them, and they would go behind like a bush or like, you know, some landscape. It wasn't really like a hill or anything. It's just like dips, and you know, like I couldn't see them for a second, and then I'd see them, and they were moving from cover to cover behind trees, and then we heard a bullet go right over us, and we were like, oh, sniper, sniper. So it sounded like we had taken, you know, like a shot, like somebody had fired at us, and we got down.
I remember a few shots. There was at least 3 I remember.
Okay.
And even the journalists reacted to it.
Yeah, and we all got down, and then I got down, and I felt silly because I couldn't see them, and there was like this really small hole, and it was like long ways, and I need tall holes for the scope. So I laid on my side, and I was pointing the scope through the hole sideways, like when you, like gangsters shooting a pistol sideways, but with a rifle, and I felt dumb. But I was like, I hope this works with you know, trajectory and bullet drop. But I was like, I don't know, maybe at this range it'll work, because it wasn't really far. But I looked to my right, and the journalists were down, and they were like, oh, record him doing that. And I was like, this is gonna look really stupid if any of my, like, you know, former military friends and like see this on the internet one day. They're gonna be like, what are you like doing with your rifle, man, laying on your side shooting sideways? And I'll be like, you weren't there, you don't understand. But so I didn't see anything, and they started to come back, and I was looking, and I could hear them yelling like, hey, can you hear me on the radio? And the Kesadeh guy was trying to talk to them, and then he set the radio down, and I looked up at him, and he was just standing. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna stand up too. So I got back up on the wall of the roof, and I took the radio from him, and I started talking to them with one hand and like finger on the trigger with the other hand. And then they could hear me, and I could hear them. And I was like, okay, I see you coming back. I'm going to shift
now,
my...
You remember that there was a threat of a potential airstrike. And there was an airstrike there sometime later, within like 20, 30 minutes.
Oh.
That's why we had to tell them to come back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, it seems like a lot of times we were just like waiting for the airstrike to come in. Like we would call, and they'd be like yes or no. But when they said yes, it would be like, okay. And then 20 minutes later, like, well, I hope they were still there, you know. But they definitely hit that one armory earlier. So after that, they came back. They didn't find the guy who had supposedly been surrendering. They didn't shoot nobody, and you know, then the airstrike hit something, and then we just went back to our building, and I was still like, you know, I don't remember if I took more pot shots at the enemy over there. But I do remember that after the van, they stopped going back and forth on foot, and they stopped taking trucks and vans back and forth because the armory was destroyed, so there's no reason for them to go over there. But I think they might have been trying to salvage stuff with trucks and motorcycles. Near the end of the day, I think only motorcycles were running back and forth there, like, and going full speed, because before they'd be going carefully around like the craters and the rubble in the road, and then after I had been shooting there, they were zipping really quick. And that was pretty much the end of the first day. We went to sleep, and then they woke us up and said it's time to go, and Vice News left.
They left. Did they leave before that? I thought they left before that.
Yeah, before we went to bed, they were like, oh, we need to go back and get batteries, and they were afraid they wouldn't be able to come back out. But, yeah, we went to sleep, and then they woke us up, and they were like, okay, come on, let's move. And it was time to go forward.